Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Today we're talking about setting boundaries. Sometimes, Alison, when I speak at conferences, and I'll talk a lot about being responsive to children and that we have to teach children and all that sort of thing. Often when I start, people say, are you one of those people who says we don't have to give children rules and boundaries? And I 100% am not. I really do think that children need those boundaries. They don't know them. They're always looking for where is my power in the world, and we have to show them where their power kind of begins and ends. Don't you think?
Yes. I mean, I'm not one that has the rules very specifically written out, like do not climb the slide, do not do this, do not do that, I'm not one of those rule kind of people. But I do think you need to have rules about respecting other people.
Right. One of the things, since you say that, one of the things that I do at conferences is I'll have people take Post-its or index cards or something and write their rules down, like one rule on every post, on a Post-it, one rule on an index card. And I have to give them like 10 minutes to do this because they have so many rules.
Oh my God.
I just stand there like they're still writing.
Yeah, I do remember that. Like when I worked at a child care center, there was a woman who had all these rules written down on a big easel board paper. And I mean, it was like 20 rules for 3-year-olds. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. And some of the rules, and then they would be in my classroom. And I'm like, yeah, we don't have those rules. Like I let them do certain things that most people would not let them do. And that, I do let them climb the slide so long as they do it safely because that builds a lot of muscles.
Yeah, that's good to hear because it really is an important movement. And people are like, they can't climb the slide. And I keep saying that's a lie. They can climb the slide.
They can climb the slide. They should climb the slide. And I've had that argument with other teachers. That's like their number one rule on the playground is you cannot climb the slide.
Yes, they can climb the slide.
Why not? Why can't they climb the slide?
Because adults have to spot them and nobody wants to do that. I don't know why. I don't know why. Anyway.
And when I take the kids outside now, I let them ride bikes in whatever direction they want to do. Mm-hmm. Because in my mind, I'm watching them. They're not going to crash because I'm watching them. I make sure they don't go fast. But the important thing to me is they're pedaling the bike.
Right.
That's what's important.
Right.
Why am I going to stop them to make them go around the other way?
On the slide, they're exercising important muscles, but that doesn't mean there's no boundary. I mean, whenever I have facilitated that, there's been a boundary. The boundary is if you see people climbing up the slide, then you can't go down. And if you see people going down the slide, then you can't climb up, which really is not its own rule. It's part of one of the 3 big rules of early childhood. There are 3 big boundaries for early childhood, I think. And, you can disagree, Alison, but I've always sort of looked at it as, one of the big rules is health and safety. And that's what that playground thing would fall under. Be safe. If someone is climbing up the slide, you can't go down would be the boundary, but it's all based on be safe. And then another one for me was always respect for people, which has to do with how they approach, especially their frustration when they want something or, want somebody to move, or they have to be respectful of people and they have to respect property. And I don't think that we really clearly define any of those in our heads. And I think we have, those people who are sitting in my conference sessions for 10 minutes writing rules. I think they all fall under one of those 3.
Right? They do. They all fall into one of those 3. So when I talk to the children in my class, I give them those rules. Like, here are your rules. You need to respect yourself, which is kind of like make sure you are safe and doing the right things at all times and being kind to people. Respect other people, which is kindness and, generosity and cooperating with others, and respect your space, and anything that happens during the day falls into one of those categories. Hitting your friends. Should you be hitting your friends? No, that falls into respecting for people. So if you teach the kids what those rules are and what they mean in the beginning of the year, then you can have these awesome conversations with them about things when things go awry.
Right.
You could be like, well, was that respectful? Were you cooperating? Teach them those words, because then you can have a really good conversation when when you need to kind of set a boundary or you need to talk to them about bad behavior, because they'll understand it if you just keep teaching them about it.
Yeah, like what I like to do is look at children. If they've done something like hit a classmate, I'll look
Yeah.
at them and say, "Be kind. Let's ask for the toy that you want." Because then what I'm doing is defining kindness for them. When you just look at children and you say, "Be kind," they don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And your kind and my kind can be two very different things. So if I demonstrate it that way and I say to them, "Be kind, let's give each other space while we're walking. Be kind, let's find a way to use that toy together." So then they realize, oh, that's all part of being kind. Or when
Yeah.
you say to them, "Be safe, we should walk in the hallway," or "Be safe, hold my hand when we're crossing the street," they understand that's how I'm defining safe.
Yes. Well, I think you said something really good. Let's find out how we can do that together, I think is a
Mm-hmm.
very big part. I think adults a lot of times just like to do things for the children. And what I do in my classroom is, you know, whatever it may be, they can't share a toy, say they're having trouble sharing.
Well, they're
And I
always going to have
say,
trouble sharing. They're
they're
early
always
learners.
going to have, it's so hard
Sharing
to,
isn't real.
well, it's not, you know what I mean? Like, I don't share my car or my house with
Right.
people. So it's like a hard
You
concept,
don't?
you know,
I
but
was
like
kind
what
of
I
looking at your
do,
car the other day. You don't share the car?
yeah, like, like, trust me, I wish I could share some things with some people. I'd be living in a much bigger
I
house,
know. But
but it doesn't work
we don't
that
share the
way.
things, our things that have great value to us. We don't share them.
Yeah.
And you
So
have to
then,
figure for an early learner, pretty much everything has great value
right,
emotionally, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
I
don't know
mean,
if sharing is the word. Like,
sharing is really hard. I mean, sharing is very hard. I mean, what I usually do is let's figure out how
hmm
we could do this together is a big thing. And I usually now my class, I mean, I have the youngest kids that are in a public school anywhere, and my kids can easily go up to another kid and say, "You really bothered me. I'd like to play with that toy. Can we play together?
tell the world
Or can I
how old
have
the
a
kids are in your classroom. Tell them how old
they're
they are.
two
hmm
they're 2 years old. They turn 3 when they're with me, and they're in a public school. So they're the youngest kids in a public school in our state, but I think the entire United States, to be
Wow,
honest. I
really?
don't think there's any program like ours. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's quite unique. Um,
And yet you're
but
teaching them behavior
yes,
at
but
that
if I
age
can
every
get
day.
these 2-year-olds who are the youngest in a public school to talk to each other when things are bothering them,
Yeah, because they
then
don't know how to do
anybody
that.
can.
They're
They don't
not
know how to do
born
that.
knowing how to do that. And I would like to just put out there that I think there are adults who still don't know how to do that.
That is true. Now, imagine if those adults went to a really awesome program when they were 2.
Right?
They would
Right?
know how.
Right? If they spent their time with you and me listening to this podcast,
That's true too.
I
They
think it
should
would make
take
all the difference. I don't
yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah,
And I think one of the things we have to do too when we are setting boundaries, when we're saying to them, "Be kind, let's figure out how we can use that together," and they don't want to and they're frustrated because little children have such big emotions, we have to let them know it's okay to feel frustrated. I also can't erase that. I
yeah,
have to look at them and say, "I know that you're frustrated. I'm sorry you're frustrated.
yeah,
Let's figure out what we can do next time,
yeah.
or let's
Next
figure out
time.
what we can do now.
Yeah.
It's
Or
okay."
I have even said to the child, say if a child hit another child, do you see how that upset that person? And then they're like, "Oh,
Sometimes,
she's
right?
crying." I mean,
Sometimes.
sometimes that works
Sometimes
with
they
some
don't
kids.
care. Sometimes they just
Sometimes
look
they
at me
don't
like
care.
they shrug. And
Yeah,
that's when I'll try and remind them of what it feels like to be hurt. These kids are very
yeah,
egocentric and they only see the world from their own point of view. So one of the things that I'll say to them sometimes when I have a child who's just sort of looking at me like, "Yeah, I see her crying. I don't really care."
yes.
I'll
Some
look
of
at
them
her and
don't
I'll say,
care.
"That hurts her. When you hit her, that hurts her. Like that time you fell when we were going to the playground. Like that, when that hurt your
Yeah.
skin,
Well, I
that
I
hurts her
have
skin."
taught yeah, I have taught the kids in my class what can you do to make that person feel better. Now,
hmm
every single thing, it does not matter what it was. The child could be hurt, child could just have hurt feelings, it could be anything. Their solution is I want to get them an ice pack. So so now I
Yeah,
ask
but then
them,
they don't ever want to put the ice on.
I know. Well, sometimes they're not even really injured. They're just like, they have their feelings hurt.
I want to
And
get her an ice pack, but she's sad.
yeah, but they're like, I want to get her an ice pack. I'm like, if you think that's what's going to make her feel better because you upset her, then go ahead and give her an ice pack. And now
right?
they think it's like the funniest thing. I mean, then, the kid takes the ice pack and then they're like, oh, I do feel better because it
Band-Aids too. Band-Aids will help.
Yeah. it makes them forget. They're like, oh, I'm holding this cold thing and I'm not hurt,
Right.
But there's so many, like,
I don't know. Don't you think too, like if I'm teaching children these three big rules, I'm teaching them health and safety, respect for people, respect for property, which in child speak are be safe, be kind, take care of our things, that I have to do the same thing in the classroom when I'm with them. I have to be kind to anyone who walks in the room. I have to do things that are safe. I can't, how many times I have seen teachers tell young children that they can't stand on the furniture, be safe, keep your feet on the ground, and then a teacher will get on a chair to hang something up.
Yeah, or they sit on the tables.
Right? Like, you're teaching them it's okay because adults are doing it.
Yeah, don't scream while you are screaming for them to not scream.
Yeah,
is one of my big things. I'm like, well, you're screaming, so they're going to scream.
And we all make mistakes, right? We all make mistakes. Yeah. But I should then look at the children and say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have stood on that chair. It's not safe. What was I thinking? And you know what you teach children to do? You teach them to look at you and go, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have sat on the table. What was I thinking? Right?
And I think it also, I'm very quick to point out when I make a mistake. Miss Alison made a mistake. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Everybody makes mistakes and it's okay. Yes. Sometimes I tell them I forget sometimes, and I can be very forgetful. And I tell them Miss Allison forgets too. She forgets the rules sometimes too. That's okay. Because then it shows them like, oh, wow. So it is okay when I forget, So I think you have to be human with them. I forgot. I stood on a chair. I'm sorry. I didn't follow the rules. I'll do better next time. And they were like, oh, wow. Okay.
And that's how they learn apologizing.
Yes.
That's how they learn what an apology is. Better than me saying to them, go say you're sorry. Is to see me do it.
I have a whole thing against that.
Alison, you're not gonna believe it, but we only have like a very short amount of time left on this podcast. And we try to keep these short because we know that teachers and parents have limited amount of time. So here's what I think we should do. I think we should do a part 2 of setting boundaries. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because I can't believe the time is over already.
I know. It's a big meaty topic that it's hard to do in the little spurts of time that people have. So I think what we'll do is we'll sign off of this episode and then we're going to tell people to subscribe to our podcast, please. There are a variety of ways you can subscribe. If you're listening on iTunes or YouTube or wherever you are in cyberspace, please subscribe so that you'll know when we have new episodes posted because we're going to do part 2 of setting boundaries.